Hello, my name is Richard. I'm the staff attorney and program director at KACE. 2022 marks the 30th anniversary of the 1992 LA riots, also referred to as the LA Uprising. In that span of time, many documentaries, films, books, articles, and other content in various mediums have been made as we process together what happened 30 years ago, and attempt to answer the question of where do we go from here, and how do we make sure that we do not repeat the mistakes of the past. A big philosophy of mine, as is shared by many, is that we need both the powerful tool of education to examine our history through an objective lens, alongside with empathy, so that we do not neglect the human emotion factor that drives not only our motivations for our actions, but also our responses and reactions. To that effect, this internship program places an emphasis on teaching future generations the factual history of what happened, while also examining the many theories as to the why of why it happened. But teaching students factoids and having a test is not enough to help our young persons learn from the past and think creatively and practically how we can build a path toward a better tomorrow. We must teach them how to articulate and how to teach the next generation after them. That is but one of many purposes of these student presentations. Please do keep in mind that these students are still young and they are still learning. Still, I am proud to see all of our interns learn and grow so much over such a short amount of time. I encourage you to check out the other mediums covering this topic, keeping pace with what is deemed age appropriate for the time for our younger audiences alongside parental guidance. I hope that the following presentation helps spark a curiosity for other learners and leaders in training out there. Thank you.
So our topic was the LA Uprising and the race relationships, and those are our group members: Noah O, Lonnie Moon, Sydney Kim, Michelle Lee, Joseph Kim, and Samuel Kim. So basically the backgrounds, I'm just going to be starting off this presentation with a quick overview of the LA riots or the LA Uprising, and yeah, a simple overview of the events. Yep, so the LA riots or Los Angeles riots of 1992 began in Los Angeles County, California, as is, say in its name, on April 29th, 1992. So the uprising was a result of the trial regarding Rodney King. And to just further go into that, Rodney King was an African-American man who was beaten up by the police, right? He was a victim of police brutality. And as shown in the photo to the right, Rodney King was involved in a high-speed chase where he was charged with a DUI, driving under influence. And King was caught and ordered out of the car, where he was kicked and beat for 15 minutes. And one of the people on the scene, or a bystander on the scene, recorded the police brutality, and this is one of the photos of it. The injuries he received were a fractured skull, broken teeth and bones, and permanent brain damage. So the brutality went on for some time, and eventually, he was injured. He was injured pretty badly, but he somehow survived. So in the trial itself, these are the 4 police officers shown in the photo. In the beginning, all 4 were charged with assault, but the photo of which was shared in the previous slide. Let me just go back to it. This photo, the photo was used in trial as a way to acquit all 4 officers, and that was the end result. The prosecutors attempted to make it seem like the video itself wasn't as serious as it was, and what the prosecution did was they slowed down the clips of it and broke it down clip by clip, and therefore they made it not as sensitive to the public, and therefore they were able to get that result from the trial itself. And it was actually a trial where there were people actually voting for it, but the people voted for the acquittal of all 4 all 4 police officers. And the public were infuriated that 4 white cops had gotten away with racism and abuse against an African-American male. And the same day the riot started, which was April 29th, 1992. So tensions between African Americans and the Korean Americans. I would like to just go into this as a background. Uh, 2 weeks after the Rodney King event, there was another case, the killing of Latasha Harlins. And so, by the way, this for context, I'm just putting out a timeline there. What I mean by 2 weeks after is 2 weeks after the police brutality of Rodney King. And so it was before the trial, and the trial, the results came out on April 29th, 1992, but the brutality happened before that. And so 2 weeks after the Rodney King event, there was another case, the killing of Latasha Harlins. And, there was this idea that Koreans were taking over South LA. And before this event, there were already tensions between the African American community and the Korean American community. But Natasha Harlins, a 15-year-old, was accused of stealing a bottle of orange juice. And despite the fact that she had $2 in her hands, the store owner, Miss Du, thought that she was attempting to steal it. And there was a little scuffle in between Miss Du and Latasha Harlins, and Latasha Harlins threw a punch at Miss Du, which somehow resulted in Miss Du pulling out a gun and shooting her to death. And this all happened in during this time where there were already conflicts between the African American community and the Korean American community, where this the killing of Latasha Harlins was so sensitive. It's a topic that is brought up in the modern media as one of the reasons behind the LA riots as well. And so this is just another context. And Du was convicted. Miss Du, excuse me, was convicted but given probation, and then cops in the Rodney King trial were acquitted. And so the African American community were, understandably angry at these unfair trials where people were being acquitted for the deaths of, or even the cases of police brutality and this enraged people, which also led up to the riots. So the incident, what exactly happened during the LA uprising, and in this part of the slideshow, I'll just go over the main events of the LA riots. And so the start, after the court decision on April 29th, 1992, on the same day, the riots began. By 5:30 p.m., the riots became violent. Locals attacked passing motorists, forced overwhelmed LAPD to retreat. And I will go into the LAPD officers aspect of it in the next few slides, in the next slide actually. And yeah, so basically this is a photo of the aftermath of the LA riots. And so I'm bringing this up in the middle of, the idea of like the incident and going over it, just because I want to show that there's a lot of burning and riots that took place in South LA, in Koreatown and South LA. To the north of this photo is what we would consider Hollywood. And so I'm just going to point to it in a brief location. And it's this entire location on top. If you can see, this is what we consider Hollywood, and to the northwest of this photo is Beverly Hills. And so in California, these are considered the richer towns where a lot of the wealthy white people live. And so the police were actually having blockades in that area, but were not helping the riots in Koreatown. And therefore, a lot of the damage is compacted into the Koreatown, South LA community area. And so, because of this idea of like, Hollywood and Beverly Hills is a very rich neighborhood and is known for, their prestigious like community name, I think we do have to play into the fact that the LAPD were not, or played down their role in this in the LA riots of 1992, just because the damage in Koreatown and South LA was so big, because they were protecting Beverly Hills and Hollywood. So the damage caused by the LA riots resulted in 1,100 buildings being burned and $1 billion in property damages. And this is something that we do have to emphasize, because the damages were not just in the Korean American communities, but also in South LA and all throughout California. And so the damage was substantial, and it did create a huge impact in that community, which also took time to rebuild. So the attacks of the $1 billion damage, 40% was suffered by the Korean American community. During the riots, Korean Americans received very little aid or protection from police authorities due to their low social status and language barriers. So even if the police officers were able to help, they weren't able to help much. And as you can see in the photos, yeah, there are military people, police officers in military outfits who are actually protecting these businesses, but their attempts or the little aid or protection didn't really help, and because resulted in a lot of damages. So this is a photo and a video actually of two Korean Americans protecting their businesses from looters. And I will go on into a comparison later in this presentation, but most Korean men from Korea have completed the mandatory military service, and therefore these men know how to use guns and know how to protect themselves. And so in an attempt to protect their businesses, they walked out onto the streets, risking their lives to protect their businesses and to protect their stores from being burned down. And with the lack of the LAPD's help, Koreans showed that they are able to work together to protect themselves and to prevent further losses. And this is this is a time where you don't really know what's going on, and everything is just hectic. And Korean Americans are coming together to protect their businesses on the block or inside what you would call a mall, right? People came together to protect their businesses, which did a huge hand in protecting the businesses that, at least until the end of the LA riots, were not burned down. So 3 parallels comparisons to other similar incidents, excuse me. So I think a lot of us have lived through the BLM, Black Lives Matter movement, and this happened very recently, and therefore it was one of the easier ones to make a comparison to, as I actually lived through it. One of the comparisons that we would like to make is the BLM. The movement, as many may know, was a movement regarding the death of George Floyd. George Floyd is portrayed in these paintings that are being held up by these protesters. And George Floyd, an African-American man, was brutally murdered by police officers. He died due to police brutality, just like actually, let me not compare that. But he was murdered by police officers. George Floyd was suspected to have used a counterfeit $20 bill before police officers arrived and knelt on his neck and was killed. This was another show of police brutality and the impacts that it has in America, and it highlighted or spotlighted, excuse me, police brutality in America. Even though there might not be police brutality coming up on the news every single day, we do have to realize that these big events, right, deaths of certain people, are the result of the small ones that we did not pay attention to, the small small incidents that we did not pay attention to. The BLM movement was an uprising due to the death of an innocent Black man, and the same was for the LA Uprising, which is the first comparison that we like to make. The LA Uprising, I think a factor of the uprising was LaTosha Harlins and her death. And we would like to make that connection as well, because the BLM movement was this innocent person who was killed for something that they didn't really commit a crime of, right? They were suspected to have used a counterfeit $20 bill, and that led to the death of George Floyd. And the same was for LaTosha Harlins, where she was suspected to have stolen a bottle of orange juice when she literally had $2 in her hands. So we do have to highlight that aspect. And also, the BLM movement sparked riots all across the country, which led to looters taking advantage and stealing from businesses. This caused losses and damages for many businesses, just like the Korean business owners in the LA riots, except the police controlled the riots as much as possible in the BLM movement, unlike the LA riots. So these are 2 aspects that we like to take into consideration. But we do have to say that a lot of the riots were contained, and I do also have to distinguish LA riots to LA Uprising, where LA Uprising is actually people coming out onto the streets and and protesting for something that they truly believe in, right? The deaths of George Floyd and the deaths of LaTosha Harlins and the trial of Rodney King. And so because these innocent people are being injured and even to some cases being killed. I think the uprising has to do more with the factor of people coming out and protesting, while riots are people trying to take advantage of it and looting and setting fire to businesses that they see on the streets. So for media slash future, how did LA uprising shape the future slash media portrayal? So the media portrayal of the incident at the time of the incident, media portrayed Korean Americans as racist, gun-toting vigilantes. And so I think I showed the photos and the video of Korean Americans protecting their businesses, but the American media portrayed it as more of an act of violence and them trying to uh, just I think racist gun-toting vigilantes is the best way to put it. They showed footage of Koreans on rooftops transposed and Black youth firebombing businesses with Molotov cocktails. Black residents were considered lawless and Korean merchants mercenaries. It was a conflict, or the media basically putting two communities against each other, pitting two communities against each other, when it wasn't truly that, right? There's a photo on the right, Korean store owner armed with a handgun on the roof of his grocery store to protect his property. These acts were only to protect their property and to protect the businesses that after they immigrated from Korea had built from the ground up. And, I think it is a very sad thing to see where, a life's work, a decades worth of business goes down in flames just because people take advantage of it. And I think the media portrayal in a negative way pitted two communities against each other. The media spreaded lies at the time, portraying false interpretations of Korean Americans and African Americans, while the LAPD were portrayed in a positive light. So the media were once again obscuring the truth from the people, and I think that is a key thing that we have to take into the media aspect, where the media is covering up the truth. Danger of a single story, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. So this is a very well-known TED Talk where a lot of people have watched in school, but she's actually an author, and she talks about the dangers of a single story. And we just put this here. We won't be watching this the video, but it is a very great speech. But we brought this here because the danger of a single story, where if we only listen to the media, we only get one side of the story. If we listen to Korean Americans, we only get one side of the story. And if we listen to African Americans, we only get one side of the story. And so we as Korean Americans must not and cannot only view the LA riots from the perspective of the Korean American community. The African American community was heavily affected by the death of Latasha Harlins and the trial of Ronnie King. And these were two very sad events that should not have taken place in public, right? In trials, in the face of the law, but it did happen. So I would like to remind all of the viewers and whoever might be watching this presentation that in the end, there are always, or at least in this case, two victims, which were the Korean American community and the African American community. And so, do not always believe what you see on the media. Listen to all sides of the story, therefore you get the full picture. And that is just one thing that I like to emphasize. The public response. Connie Rice, a civil activist and lawyer, said the media didn't cover the failure to address the policing. Rice said it didn't cover the failure to provide the economic infrastructure, and what we ended up with was kindling business, building and building. So I think this quote, we put it in there just to portray the fact that the police were basically hailed to be, the heroes of the LA uprising, when in fact they didn't protect the people that they were supposed to protect, the citizens. And also we do have to blame the government, or at least the government, for actually not really helping the rebuild of these communities that were burned down, or these businesses that were burned down. And that just led to building a building, right? We just had to rebuild the communities, but it wasn't done in a fast of a matter, which has to be blamed on the failure of the government. The mainstream media focused on what was a very small percentage of shops that had owners who could defend themselves with guns. And so we do have to bring or shine to the light that the businesses or the photos that were portrayed in the media, or at least that we presented in this presentation, were only a small number of shops. There were a lot of people who just couldn't do anything and just watch their businesses go up in flames. And that is one of the saddest things to see. Once again, seeing your business or life's work go down in flames. But the media portrays these people who are able to protect their businesses once again as like people protecting the businesses, when in fact it wasn't a true evaluation of the people or the business owners in the South LA and Koreatown neighborhoods. And so that was another I guess media covering up the true facts, and people began to believe what the media portrayed of the two racial groups, right? These stereotypes that were created by the media and eventually blamed on the media and those who created it. Similar to what Edichie said in the YouTube video, the single story of Koreans and African Americans being portrayed as mercenaries and lawless people was believed by the people around the nation. And I guess part of it still lasts today, where a lot of people, when they think of Koreans or when they think of African Americans, they might think of the LA Uprising in 1992. And these things aren't true, and they might be true, but just not the full portrayal of the uprising itself. And so I think we do have to bring that into the spotlight. Afterwards, after the incident, Koreans quickly revamped the property damage that happened, but the lives lost during the uprising cannot be overturned. The riots brought awareness for the Americans to the huge Korean American population presence in South California and the Korean-owned businesses. To the Korean Americans, LA riots symbolized a broken American dream and brought importance on economic success and social inclusion in American society. Also, it taught them to be politically active and stand for their representation in social and ethnic issues. So after the LA uprising, I think the Korean American community and the Korean community itself learned to reflect on the past and to create a brighter future. And therefore, a lot of South LA and Koreatown is rebuilt. And, I think what we are here doing, Korean American Civic KACE, what we're doing is actually, helping and be tell the people to be politically active and stand for their representation in social and ethnic issues in government, right? And I think, this was an event that we reflect on and, set the grounds for the future in a bright way. This is a photo of the before and after. So these are the fires that are being burned down in South LA, and this is the after, right? A lot of these buildings were rebuilt, and this is a beautiful rebuilt building of a building that was burned down during the uprising. And I think a lot of the South LA and Koreatown has been rebuilt and has don't really recognize the 1992 LA uprising as like something of the present, but more something of the past and like something that you would like read in history books. But the before and after really brings the true weight of the situation. If you were the business owner of that building and you see your building going up in flames, that's just not something very good to see. And so this is our works cited, and thank you for listening. I hope the main takeaways of this presentation were that one, don't always listen to the media itself and always have the full picture. And second, I think the main one is that when the media or when the public pits two races or communities against each other, you always have to understand that your understanding of the situation isn't always the full one, right? And as we saw with the Korean American community and the African American community, in the present, we, meaning the Korean American and African American community, have come together in consolidation and actually, have looked at the past and created a better future once again. And I think, that's another beautiful thing to see, that the future has been laid perfectly for us, and that we just have to uphold it by remembering these things. And third, And lastly, the uprisings were something that we should not ever forget, that these were things that actually happened and brought big changes to the government and actually racism in the United States. And so, the LA uprising and race relations is something that just we look at as history, but it brings a lot of weight. And so, thank you.